I wasn't supposed to be home that night. The Seattle trip had been on my calendar for months. 3 days, 2 presentations, and a final roundtable with one of our firm's biggest clients. I was packed for the full run, dress shirts, polished shoes, even the aftershave Ellie liked. But the last meeting was abruptly canceled after the client had to leave town for a family emergency. That left me with a full free day and a decision: fly home early or waste 24 hours holed up in a hotel room watching pay-per-view. I thought, why not surprise her? We hadn't spent real time together in weeks. Between her new job responsibilities and my travel schedule, we'd started drifting, maybe not in a dramatic way, but enough that I'd felt it. Missed dinners. Cold coffee in the morning. Kisses that landed but didn't linger. So I figured I'd come home, grab lunch with her the next day, maybe cook something together for dinner. I even imagined walking through the door with a stupid grin, seeing her light up when she realized I was home early. Yeah, that was the plan. It was already past 10 by the time my lift turned onto our street. The whole neighborhood was asleep, dark windows and quiet porches, except for one house, ours. Porch light on. Living room glowing. Curtains cracked open just enough for the warm yellow hue to spill out. I smiled, thinking maybe she'd stayed up late watching something, maybe drinking wine, waiting for me without knowing she was waiting. But as we pulled closer, I saw something that stopped me cold. A silver BMW in the driveway. Not a neighbor's car. Not anyone I recognized. I sat there for a second, watching the reflection of the porch light glint off the hood. The Lyft driver glanced at me through the rearview, maybe sensing something off. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, unbuckling my seatbelt. "Thanks." I got out slowly. My suitcase wheels clacked across the pavement. I stopped at the bottom of the steps, eyes fixed on the car. Newer model. Clean. Slight scratch on the rear fender. Whoever it belonged to, they hadn't just dropped by. They were still here. As I climbed the porch, I noticed something else: music. Not Ellie's usual playlists, not the soft acoustic stuff she loved while cooking. This was jazzier. Louder. Saxophone heavy and playful in a way that didn't fit. I reached for the doorknob, then hesitated. Should I knock? It was my house. I turned the knob and walked in. The moment I stepped inside, I knew I'd interrupted something. The music was louder in here, coming from the speaker in the corner. Candles flickered on the coffee table. A half-full bottle of red wine sat beside 2 glasses. The fireplace, which we rarely used, glowed softly beneath a stack of burning logs. And there she was. Ellie, my wife of 8 years. Dressed in a black cocktail dress I'd never seen before. Hair pinned back like she was going out, makeup done to perfection. She was laughing, at least she had been until the sound of the door made her turn. She froze. Wineglass in hand, mid-step, 1 foot angled toward the man sitting beside her on the couch. "Oh," she said, blinking. "Jason?" I didn't answer immediately. My eyes went from her to the man. He stood up, casually smoothing his shirt as if this was nothing more than an awkward moment. No panic. No guilt in his eyes. Just mild surprise. He had that relaxed, self-assured posture. Comfortable in his skin. Comfortable in my home. "You're home early," Ellie said, setting her glass down slowly. "Yeah," I said. "Meeting got canceled." There was a long silence before she moved toward me with a careful smile. "This is Evan," she said, touching the man's arm. "We used to work together back when I was at DeWitt. He was in town for a couple days and wanted to catch up. I didn't want to bother you with it, especially since you were out of town." "Evan," the man repeated, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, man. Sorry for the surprise." I shook his hand almost by instinct. It was a solid grip. Too solid. "No problem," I said, stepping farther into the room. Ellie motioned for him to sit back down. He did, slowly, sinking into the couch like he belonged there. I stayed standing, one hand still gripping the handle of my suitcase. "So, how long have you two been catching up?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "Just a couple hours," she said quickly. "He stopped by after dinner." I nodded, glancing around. The half-empty wine bottle. 2 plates in the sink. Cloth napkins. Candles. Music. "After dinner?" She didn't answer right away. "Just wanted to celebrate a little," she added. "I found out today I got the promotion. Lead analyst." That part hit me. I hadn't known. She hadn't told me. "Congrats," I said, meaning it even though something inside me was unraveling. "That's great news." Her smile softened. "I was going to tell you. I just got distracted." I finished for her. Evan stood again, checking his watch. "Well, I should probably get going. Got an early flight." "Ellie, it was great seeing you." "Yeah," she said, walking him toward the door. "Thanks for coming." He gave her a light hug, maybe too light to mean anything, maybe just polite. Then he nodded toward me. "Take care, Jason." You too, I said, watching him leave. The door closed. Ellie turned back toward me, arms folded now. I wasn't hiding anything, she said quietly. I didn't say you were. I know how this looks. I looked at her for a long time. The makeup. The heels. The tone in her voice. Calm, measured, rehearsed. This wasn't the first time she'd imagined this conversation. I'm tired, I said finally. I'm going to unpack. She nodded slowly. Okay. I walked upstairs, suitcase thudding on each step. When I got to her bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. Something had shifted. It wasn't rage and it wasn't heartbreak, not yet. Just a cold, creeping certainty. I'd walked into a scene that hadn't been meant for me. And while nothing had been said outright, I felt it. In the way she didn't flinch. In the way he didn't bother pretending to be embarrassed. In the too smooth explanations and the perfect wine glasses. Whatever this was, it had been in motion for a while. And for the first time in our marriage, I didn't feel like her husband. I felt like an interruption. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. The bedroom was quiet, sunlight creeping through the blinds in thin, pale stripes. Ellie was still asleep beside me, her breathing soft and even, one arm curled under the pillow. From the outside, it looked like peace. But I felt none. I stared at the ceiling for a long time. My mind didn't feel like it was racing. It was more like sorting. Quietly, methodically, organizing memories. Last night hadn't exploded into anything dramatic. No fight. No yelling. No dramatic accusations. But somehow that made it worse. It had gone down too smoothly. Too easily. And it didn't leave me angry. It left me alert. I got up carefully, not wanting to wake her. As I brushed my teeth, I caught my own reflection and barely recognized the look in my eyes. Not suspicion. Not yet. Just awareness. Something was wrong. I'd known it longer than I wanted to admit. When I went downstairs, her heels were still by the door. The wine glasses were gone, washed, dried, and put away already. The candles had been blown out. Everything reset like the night had never happened. But I remembered. Every detail. Every carefully measured word. Every flicker of discomfort that only lasted a heartbeat too long. That's when I started thinking back. One moment after another began lining up like puzzle pieces I'd been shoving into the wrong spots. Ellie had changed gradually, almost imperceptibly at first. But now all those little things stood out like flashing neon signs. She joined a gym in March. That alone wasn't weird, we'd both talked about getting more active. But she didn't invite me. Never once asked if I wanted to go together, even though we used to run the trails behind the park on weekends. Now it was classes I'd never heard of, personal trainers I'd never met, sessions that always ran late. Then came the dresses. She'd always had good style, elegant, classic, tasteful. But recently there were new pieces in her wardrobe. Flashier. Expensive brands. Bold colors. Dresses with cuts she never used to wear. I'd noticed but figured maybe it was the new role at work. She was rising fast. More meetings. More networking. But now it didn't feel like dressing for work. It felt like dressing for someone. And the makeup. She'd never been heavy on it. But over the last couple months she started wearing lipstick shades I didn't recognize. A smoky eye here. A shimmer there. I told her she looked beautiful and she did, but her expression always carried a tinge of guilt when I said it. Like she wasn't sure she deserved the compliment. Then there was her phone. At some point, she started locking the screen religiously. Always face down. Always guarded. At first, I chalked it up to work privacy. She'd been working on a merger deal that involved sensitive data. But she took it everywhere. Even to the bathroom. Even into the shower. And not long ago, I'd seen her phone light up on the counter with a message preview that read only, "I miss," before she grabbed it like it was on fire. She brushed it off. Said it was her friend Clara talking about a trip they'd been reminiscing about. And I let it go. But now I remembered. Just like I remembered the April trip. She'd gone to Chicago for a seminar. Sent me pictures of the hotel, the skyline, a wine glass on a restaurant patio. I'd thought nothing of it at the time. But now that I was thinking clearly, something came back to me. The weather. She said it was raining. But in one of the pictures, sunlight bounced off her sunglasses and cast a hard shadow behind her. I'd even commented, "Thought you said it was pouring?" She replied, cleared up for a bit, and sent a smiley face. That had been enough for me. Now it wasn't. I opened my laptop that morning and checked the weather history for that weekend in Chicago. It had rained every single day. No clear skies. No sun. And yet, there she was, smiling in a sundress under bright light. It hit me in waves. Not a gut punch. Just erosion. Truth unraveling from the edges. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who questions his wife's every move, scrolls through her texts, checks phone records. That wasn't me. That had never been me. But this wasn't paranoia. This was logic. And logic told me there was a pattern. Ellie wasn't just busy. She was evasive. She wasn't just different. She was guarded. And I wasn't just hurt. I was being lied to. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee going cold. I kept thinking back to the night before. The way she'd explained things. The ease in her voice. How she hadn't panicked, not even when I walked in unannounced. Because that moment wasn't unexpected. It was rehearsed. I think I knew then, really knew, that something was going on. Maybe not the full scope. Maybe not the timeline. But the question wasn't if anymore. It was how long. How long had I been living with someone who wasn't telling me the truth? How long had I been sleeping beside a stranger? The worst part? She didn't even seem conflicted. Later that morning, Ellie came downstairs dressed for work, black slacks, a beige blouse, simple gold earrings. The look she gave me over her coffee mug was soft. Familiar. Like nothing had changed. Like we were still fine. "Sleep okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, forcing a small smile. "I'm heading in early. Gotta check in with the team." I nodded. "Want me to bring dinner home tonight?" "Sure," she said. "Whatever's easy." I watched her gather her bag, check her phone, glance at herself in the mirror near the door. She didn't see the way my eyes lingered. She didn't know I was memorizing her tone, her expression, her every move. Because I wasn't just trying to figure her out anymore. I was trying to figure out how I'd missed it for so long. After she left, I didn't go into the office. I called in sick. Sat on the couch in silence. Replayed conversations from the last few months. Her late meetings. Her new gym classes. The trip. The new clothes. The music that played when I walked in last night, how she'd let it keep playing. Everything pointed in the same direction. And yet, part of me still wanted to be wrong. Still wanted to believe there was some version of this where it was all innocent. Just odd timing. Just coincidence. But that version of the story had too many holes. By midday, I found myself at the desk, clicking into our doorbell camera account. We'd updated the security system in March after a package theft. I hadn't looked at the history much since then, there'd been no reason. But now I wondered. I started sorting through the footage. Nothing urgent, nothing too telling. Just neighbors walking dogs. The mailman. A few packages. Ellie coming and going, always alone. But then, one alert from 4 nights ago. Movement at 9:12 p.m. I paused. She'd told me she'd been at Clara's apartment that night. I clicked into the clip, eyes narrowing. It was Ellie. Answering the door. In a robe. And the man from last night? He was standing on the porch. Smiling. She opened the door without hesitation. No greeting, no surprise. Just familiarity. They stood close. She stepped aside and he walked in like he'd done it before. The clip ended as the door closed. My hands were steady. Too steady. I told myself I wasn't going to make assumptions. But assumptions weren't necessary anymore. The truth had a shape now. And it looked a lot like betrayal. After I watched the footage, I didn't move. The screen had long since gone black, my hands still resting on the keyboard. Outside, the world was going about its business. A delivery truck rolled by. Birds chirped in the distance. But inside, everything felt still, suspended, like a breath held too long. There was no rush of panic, no shouting in my head. Just this quiet finality, like the sound of a door clicking shut for good. I told myself I wouldn't jump to conclusions. That I'd collect facts. Wait for clarity. But clarity doesn't come with a ribbon. It comes with a timestamp. 9:12 p.m. It comes with a frame-by-frame record of your wife letting another man into your home in a silk robe. I wanted to stop there. Pretend that was enough. But some part of me, the part that still hoped I was wrong or maybe just needed everything laid bare, clicked forward. The camera, bless its automation, had logged another alert 24 minutes later. I opened the clip. They came back into frame near the front door. She was laughing. Laughing. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. It wasn't loud or forced, it was soft and real, the kind that sneaks up on you when you're completely at ease with someone. The kind of laugh that used to be mine. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. They paused on the welcome mat. She leaned into him like she belonged there. Like that moment, under the soft porch light, inches from the camera, wasn't a risk at all. Then he kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't shy. It was an asterisk, mate. Not the kind of kiss that happens after a few drinks. Not an accident. Not curiosity. It was the kind of kiss people don't give unless they know it's safe. Unless they're sure the person kissing them back isn't going to walk away. Ellie kissed him back. I closed the video player. For a long moment, I just sat there. I wasn't angry, not in the way I thought I'd be. No yelling. No broken glass. No screaming why into an empty room. It was worse than that. It was the hollow kind of pain. The kind that seeps into the corners of your life and coats everything you thought you understood. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel like I could. It was like the part of me that could fall apart hadn't caught up yet. I opened a folder on my desktop and created a new one. I named it simply Ellie. Then I dragged both camera files into it and labeled them. 9.12 _ porch arrival. 9.36 _ porch departure. I took a screenshot *T of the kiss. Just in case. It felt sterile, the way I did it, methodical. Like I was building a case instead of reacting to the wreckage of a marriage. But maybe that's what I needed. Something clean. Something orderly. Because the alternative, the emotional chaos, would have swallowed me whole. That afternoon, I didn't go back to the camera footage. I didn't even stay in the same room. I left my office, walked down the hall, and sat in the guest bedroom. It was the one we never used, the one with the old duvet, the stack of books we'd always said we'd read together. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the bookshelf. My mind wasn't racing. It was empty. And that scared me more than anything. I wasn't heartbroken yet. I was numb. And numbness is dangerous. It makes you think you're okay. Around 5:30, Ellie texted me. Heading home. Want me to grab anything? I stared at it for a full minute. The absurdity hit me like a wave. She was texting like nothing had happened. Like our lives hadn't just cracked in two. I replied. No. I already picked something up. I didn't want her to know I was onto her. Not yet. Not until I decided what came next. When she walked through the door, I was in the kitchen pretending to scroll through my phone. She looked tired, work bag over her shoulder, hair slightly windblown, the usual rhythm in her step. The familiarity of it almost made me forget. Almost? Hey, she said, smiling. Long day? Yeah, I said. Yours? The usual, she replied, setting her bag down. Meetings? More meetings. My brain's mush. I nodded, taking a sip from my water glass to avoid having to say anything else. She didn't notice. Or maybe she was counting on me not noticing her. We moved through the evening like clockwork. Dinner. Dishes. Brief mentions of our days. She made a joke about her boss and laughed, and I watched her face carefully. Watched how easy the lie came. How normal everything looked on the surface. But I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. When she went to shower, I stayed behind at the table. My plate was empty, but my appetite hadn't returned. I opened my phone and stared at the saved videos again. Just the thumbnails. I didn't play them. I didn't need to. I'd seen all I needed to. She came back downstairs in pajamas, hair damp and combed straight. She curled up on the couch, turned on a crime show we both used to like, and invited me with a look to join her. I didn't. I'm gonna call it a night, I said. She looked surprised but nodded. You okay? Yeah. Just tired. She smiled, gentle, even concerned. You've been traveling too much. You need rest. Yeah, I said, forcing a small smile. I'll see you upstairs. I didn't go upstairs, not right away. I waited, listened to the sound of the TV. Then the sound of it turning off. Then footsteps. Then silence. Only then did I go up. She was already in bed. I slipped in beside her, barely moving the mattress. She didn't stir. I lay there, staring at the ceiling again, just like the morning before. This time, I didn't close my eyes. I wasn't mourning yet. Not fully. I was bracing. People talk about heartbreak like it's a singular moment, like it arrives with a bang. But that's not how it works. Not really. It builds. It seeps in. It takes the shape of quiet things, a robe, a wine glass, a laugh, a touch, a kiss under porch light. I didn't sleep much that night. But when I did, I dreamed of the camera footage. And when I woke up the next morning, I knew what I had to do. It's strange how quickly you adapt to pretending. Once you've seen what you're not supposed to see, you either crumble or you play along. And I wasn't ready to crumble. Not yet. For the next few days, I kept the same routine. Wake up early. Act tired but normal. Make coffee. Ask Ellie if she needed anything from the store. Smile just enough to avoid suspicion. She seemed relieved. Comfortable. Whatever tension she'd felt after I came home early had dissolved. She was back in control. Or so she thought. But behind the small talk, I was watching. Listening. Taking notes in my head like some invisible auditor combing through a spreadsheet of our life. I didn't check her phone. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. I already had enough proof to break the foundation. What I needed now was context. How long this had gone on. Who knew? How deep the lie ran. It was Thursday when I found the first crack. Ellie had left her work laptop on the dining table when she ran upstairs to change. She never left it out. She guarded that thing like it held national secrets. Out of habit, I glanced at the screen. An email tab was still open. Not work. Social media. It was her personal account, Facebook. She must have clicked a notification and forgotten to close it. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. But I did. What caught my eye wasn't a message from Evan. It was the sender, Clara Jennings. Clara had been one of Ellie's closest friends for years. They met at her old job, and over time, Clara had become a constant in our life. Invited to dinners, birthdays, double dates. She and Ellie texted daily. I always thought she was sharp, maybe a little brash, but loyal. The kind of person who'd go to bat for her friends. So imagine the feeling when I clicked on their conversation and started scrolling. It wasn't a betrayal. It was a blueprint. Hundreds of messages, some dating back almost a year. And nearly all of them revolved around Evan. The affair. The excuses. The cover-ups. It was all there. One message, from Clara, stood out immediately. If Jason gets suspicious, blame work. Or use me again. You know I don't care. Just make sure you delete your call logs. Use me again. Just like that. Casual. Like lying to me was a shared hobby. Ellie had replied, "You're a lifesaver. I don't know what I'd do without you." He suspects nothing. He suspects nothing. I kept reading. Each message was another nail in the coffin of whatever dignity remained in our marriage. Another from Clara. "Next time, just use my apartment. Evan's car in your driveway is a dead giveaway." Ellie responded, "I know. Stupid." I panicked when Jason came home early. I had to spin something fast. "I think he bought it." I stared at that sentence for a long time. I think he bought it. It was one thing to see Ellie lie. It was another to realize she was performing, calculating, practicing her lines, debriefing with someone afterward like it was a game they were winning. And what did Clara get out of it? Was it thrill? Loyalty? Did she think she was helping Ellie find herself? Like some misguided support role in a movie about liberation? Whatever it was, she wasn't a bystander. She was part of it. They shared more than gossip. They shared tactics. *TS of text conversations with Evan. Photos from their nights together. One even showed Ellie in front of a bathroom mirror, wearing a dress I'd complimented just a week before. The caption underneath, sent by Ellie, read, "Evan hasn't seen this one yet, smirking face." Clara replied, "Girl, Jason doesn't deserve you. You two are electric." Electric. I felt sick. It wasn't just that Ellie had cheated. It was that she'd built an entire alternate life with an audience, with cheerleaders, with a best friend who had sat across from me, smiled, laughed at my jokes, clinked wine glasses with me, and then walked out the door to help coordinate my humiliation. I took *TS of everything, not because I needed more proof. I already had all the proof in the world, but because I wanted to remember what betrayal looked like when it was wearing a familiar face. I copied the conversation into a Word doc, organized by date, labeled each section by topic. Clara offers alibi, Ellie brags about lying, Evan and hotel plans, and so on. It was meticulous, cold, mechanical, and it was the only thing keeping me from losing control. That night, I didn't sleep in our bedroom. I told Ellie I had a migraine and took a pillow to the couch. She seemed concerned, kissed my forehead, told me she'd bring me something in the morning. She said it with such tenderness that, if I didn't know what I knew, I might have believed she loved me. But she didn't love me. She loved convenience. She loved safety. She loved having a home base while she played tourist in someone else's life. And Clara? She loved being the accomplice. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, the dim blue glow of the hallway light spilling into the living room. For the first time since the night I came home early, I felt something sharper than sadness. I felt rage. Not loud, not explosive. Just this burning, steady thing in my chest. I wanted to ask them both, did you ever even hesitate? Did you ever stop and think about what it would feel like for me to find out? Or did I matter so little that I was never more than a footnote in your story? I thought about confronting Clara. About walking into her office with the printouts, dropping them on her desk, and watching her face fall. But that would have given her too much satisfaction. She'd see it as drama. She'd sink into it, twist it into a performance. No, I wasn't giving either of them that. Instead, I spent the next day gathering everything I needed. I backed up the *TS, labeled each file, created a second folder, one for legal purposes. I knew I'd need it eventually. And then I opened a blank document. At the top, I typed, "This is everything I know." And I started writing. Not for Ellie. Not for Clara. For me. I wrote about the way I used to trust my wife. The way I used to think we were solid even when we drifted. I wrote about how I ignored the signs, the new clothes, the locked phone, the business trips that never made sense. I wrote about the night I walked in and saw her dressed for someone else. And I wrote about how it felt to realize the person I thought had my back was standing right behind her with a lighter waiting to burn everything down. By the time I finished, the document was 7 pages long. I saved it, printed a copy, folded it in half. Then I walked out to the backyard, sat on the steps, and watched the sun go down. Ellie was inside, laughing on the phone. Probably Clara. Probably talking about some future weekend plan, or what dress to wear next time, or how clueless I was. Except I wasn't clueless anymore. I knew everything. And the truth wasn't just devastating. It was clarifying. I didn't leave in a rush. There was no dramatic suitcase toss, no shouted accusations, no late-night standoff in the living room. The moment I decided to go, it felt quiet. Focused. Like something long overdue had finally settled into place. The night before, Ellie had fallen asleep with her phone in hand. Her hair spread across the pillow, face peaceful, unaware. That used to be a moment I found beautiful in made in its stillness. But now I looked at her and saw a stranger. Someone who had practiced deceit so thoroughly that sleep itself didn't disturb her conscience. I didn't sleep. Instead, I lay awake and rehearsed my exit in my head like choreography. I knew how this had to go. If I confronted her, it would spiral into blame, denial, spin. I didn't want to hear her tell me it wasn't serious or that it didn't mean anything. I didn't want tears. I didn't want one more lie stacked on top of the pile she'd already built. I wanted out. So when the morning came, I was ready. She left for yoga around 7:10 a.m. just like she did every Saturday. Same outfit, same water bottle, same cheerful back in an hour tossed over her shoulder. The only difference was that this time I didn't answer. As soon as the front door clicked shut, I moved. I didn't take everything. Just the essentials, my laptop, some clothes, toiletries, and 2 framed photographs that meant something to me before everything fell apart. One was from our trip to Maine 3 years ago before the silence started between us. The other was a picture of my dad and me taken long before I ever met Ellie. I didn't pack fast. I packed intentionally. Methodically. I didn't want to forget anything, but I also didn't want to leave any reason to come back. Next came the accounts. I logged into our bank and transferred my portion to a new, private checking account I'd opened a few days earlier. The money I'd set aside over the years for emergencies? That was mine. She could keep the joint account and whatever was left in it. I also removed my name from the utilities, canceled the shared insurance, and rerouted any upcoming deliveries I knew were mine. It was the kind of exit you only plan when you've sat in the quiet long enough to think everything through. Then I opened the folder, the one I'd named Ellie. Inside were *TS from the camera footage, the messages with Clara, and a printed copy of the document I'd written, "This is everything I know." I laid them out in neat stacks on the kitchen table. Not to accuse her. Just to show her she'd lost the benefit of doubt. That the curtain had fallen. On top of everything, I placed a manila envelope with divorce papers inside. Not a draft. Not a threat. Signed. Filed. Real. I'd already been to the attorney earlier in the week. Told him what I needed. No drama, no stalling, no drawn-out court battles. Just clarity. Closure. He understood. Told me I wasn't the first person to walk into his office looking shell-shocked but resolved. "You'd be surprised how many people get their answers from camera footage," he said. "Truth doesn't hide well in a digital age." I didn't leave a long note. I didn't see the point. I'd already said everything I needed to in the document. But I did leave one short letter. I wrote it the night before. Typed it. Printed it. Folded it twice. I placed it on top of the divorce papers. It read, "Ellie, this is not an act of anger. This is a response to the choices you made without me. You built a second life and in doing so, dismantled ours. I'm not staying in a story where I'm the only one being honest. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. Please respect that. Jason." It was mid-morning when I zipped the last bag. I walked through the house one final time, touched the back of the couch where we used to sit and binge documentaries, paused in the kitchen where we used to drink coffee in silence before work, looked at the stairway, the photos on the wall, the little evidence of a life we'd built. Everything still looked like ours, but none of it felt like mine anymore. I locked the door behind me and slid my key through the mail slot. Gone. Just like that. No shouting. No slammed doors. Just absence. And the funny thing is, that's what I think would hit her the hardest. Not that I yelled. Not that I confronted her. But that I didn't. That I simply walked away. That there wouldn't be a fight to frame herself as the victim of. No explosion to turn into a story of how it all fell apart. No reaction to manipulate. Just a complete, uncontestable vacuum where I used to be. The space I left behind would say more than I ever could. As I drove away, I didn't look back. There was no cinematic moment where I watched the house shrink in the rearview mirror. I kept my eyes on the road. 10 minutes later, I pulled into the parking lot of a storage unit I'd rented under a temporary lease. I placed the few items I couldn't take with me in the trunk, locked the unit, and moved on. By noon, I was checked into a modest Airbnb a few towns over, nothing fancy. A guest house behind a retired couple's home, small kitchen, quiet porch, was just beyond the back patio. It wasn't home, but it was clean. Untouched by betrayal. That was enough. That afternoon, I sat in the porch chair, coffee in hand, phone turned face down beside me. The silence was unfamiliar but not unpleasant. It was a silence I chose. At 2:17 p.m., my phone lit up. I didn't need to check to know it was her. A second later, it buzzed again. Then again. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop and refreshed my email. One new message from my attorney. Subject, filing confirmed. Body, Jason, the petition is submitted and timestamped. You'll receive your official confirmation via mail. You're clear to move forward. Let me know if she contests. I stared at the message for a long time. It was real now. And I felt lighter. Not happy. Not yet. But free in a way that felt like fresh air after a long time in a sealed room. Around 4 p.m., the calls stopped. Around 5, the texts began. They started with questions. Where are you? Jason, can we talk? What is this? Is this a joke? Then came the attempts to regain ground. I don't know what you think you saw. Can we please talk before you make any decisions? It wasn't serious. I swear to you. Please don't do this. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. She would find the paperwork. The screensh asterisk TS. The message. The silence. And she'd understand. Not because I'd screamed. But because I hadn't. The silence didn't sit well with Ellie. Within hours of finding the note and documents, her messages shifted from confusion to anger. You blindsided me, she wrote. We should have talked first. That was followed by late-night voicemails, her voice cracking, pleading. Then came the apologies. I was lost, it didn't mean anything, I still love you. But they weren't for me, they were for the version of me that used to forgive. That version didn't live here anymore. She missed the stability, the ease of hiding in my trust. Not me. She called it a mistake. But a mistake doesn't require planning, alibis, or accomplices. I found peace where I least expected it, a small cabin near Hudson Lake. I fixed old boats, taught online courses, and spent mornings in quiet stillness. No more pretending. No more waiting to be chosen. Just me, a life rebuilt from honesty and calm. Ellie's betrayal didn't define me, it revealed her. And in her unraveling, I found a version of myself that didn't need closure from her. I gave it to myself. Freedom, I learned, doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes it's just the absence of someone who